Okay, I did take the survey earlier, and lots of you raised your hands. I can't believe you're up there, Jerry. Is that what you were saying? Well, just because I'm up here doesn't mean I'm not nervous. Boy, it doesn't mean I'm not nervous. But you've probably heard that old trick, that if you're nervous standing in front of a crowd, you should look out and imagine them all in their underwear. As I ask forgiveness from the ladies of the Altar Guild, hold on 1 second. Okay, I feel better. So you are probably wondering, okay, Jerry, what's this all about? How'd you get me here from Virginia or Michigan or right around the corner? What is all this about? Well, as all of you from St. Peter's know, I'm the president of the church council here at St. Peter's. And I was doing a little math the other day and realized that today is almost 18 months from the day that I was elected, or chosen, or whatever word you want to use, for being put into that office. And as all of you know who are part of the St. Peter's community, it's been an eventful last 18 months. And whether it was the right thing to do or not, I started thinking about those 18 months. And the first thing I couldn't help but realize was, in the course of the first 9 months, half of this term, I ended up working with 3 different pastors, 2 interims, and our new senior pastor. Not so new anymore. And all I could think of was, what did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? 3 in 9 months. That's got to be a record, I hope, for anyone else that's ever held this office. But it's been eventful and a whole lot of fun. But there's some routine with it too, as you might expect. Meeting agendas, committee reports, financial statements, day by day, focusing on the operation of this church. And as this calendar year started, something just didn't seem right. Something wasn't happening. Something was wrong. As I mentioned earlier, and she's in the front row, personally, I lost my dear friend Pam. For those of you who didn't know her, Pam had all kinds of health issues. And as much as she fought, she could fight no longer. But while she was here, oh, did she fight. And oh, did she have fun. You all know the stories. If Pam wanted you to do something, you did it. And if you wanted something to get done, we still say it now, all these months later. Well, Pam used to do that. And now we have to find 6 or 8 people to get the same thing done. But over the course of these few years, she became my dear friend. Even though she's the one who nominated me to be president. Before I had ever served a single day on council, I walked into my first meeting as president of that body. But oh, what a friend. And oh, did I learn a lot about how to live life and how to treat people. So it wasn't a very good beginning of the year. And I was also struggling with another relationship. How was I going to manage that friendship, and how was it going to change? So there was all this emptiness, and I felt lost. Well, you might know the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And oh boy, did my teacher appear. Sort of an interesting story, and I can share it later, but right out of the blue, a coach appeared by the name of Robert. And Robert helped me see what was missing and what was needed. And I felt a whole lot better after he helped me work through it. So much so that I had a really great Easter Sunday. We had a glorious service here that day, nearly a packed house on a beautiful day, and it was just a really nice holiday. So much so that later that day, I decided to go down and treat myself to Easter dinner. And as all of you know, most of you know, if I want to go somewhere, I just walk. Because, again, I'm legally blind and try to be independent and a whole lot stubborn. But I was going to celebrate Easter and have a good dinner. So I walked all the way down Route 58 and had dinner at Bob Evans. And as I left home later in the afternoon, I wore my prescription sunglasses, what I like to call my blind glasses. But when I got done after a really great meal, it was dark. Evening had set in. So I walked up Route 58 with my sunglasses, right there in front of Wendy's and McDonald's, where there's a little berm in between or curb in between the two lanes. And as I've walked by that curb 100 times, but in the dark with sunglasses, I never saw it. Boom! Went flying on that curb and fell flat on my back over my left side. And as I'm laying there, wondering what to do next with cars wanting to get out of there, I was finally able to pick myself up, and being the person I am, decided it was time to walk up 58 and back home, even though my shoulder was pretty painful and hanging down my side. So I walked all the way up 58 and down Cleveland Avenue towards my home here downtown. And as it's hurting more and more, as you might expect, I thought maybe I ought to stop at the emergency room and have them take a look, because I don't think I was going to be able to shake it off. So as I got to Cleveland Avenue and the Hempel Funeral Home, I needed to cross over there, as you're familiar with Amherst, to get over to the emergency room. But again, with dark sunglasses, I missed the curb and fell again, same way, same exact way, flat on my back on the grass in front of that old Fifth Third Bank building. This time, I wasn't going anywhere. I couldn't move the upper half of my body. I knew something was wrong. The ironic thing was, as you all know, the ambulance service and the emergency room was right around the corner. But I wasn't moving. So I got my phone out and called the ambulance. They come running up, and the guys come running up. Oh my gosh, what happened? What are you doing? I said, just get me on the stretcher and let's go to the emergency room. Because if you hear the story, it's just going to sound more and more stupid. So we got there, and the nurse heard the story again. They took an x-ray, and as all of you know, I had a broken shoulder. And the nurse had heard all the story, like I said, and she's helping me with this thing, an elaborate sling with all kinds of straps and Velcro and all kinds of stuff, which I couldn't do myself because it was wrapped around and every which way to Sunday. So as the nurse is helping me, she's looking at me and she says, well, you know you're not walking home, right? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I've heard the story. You told me. With this thing, you're not walking home. We're not letting you walk home. And I said, well, what am I going to do? What do you want me to do? What are you talking about? And she said, well, you're calling a friend or doing something because we're not letting you go. So I thought, 10:30 in the evening on Easter Sunday, who am I going to call? Ghostbusters? So I called the only person I could think to call, my friend Bill Strom, because I knew he and Judy would have no problem with it. My other friend, Judy Alexander, they've been together for 30 years. Well, I was I was joking with the ambulance driver and was joking with the nurse about this goofy experience I had gone through. Because that's, regardless of how empty I might have been feeling before, I've always managed to laugh about different things that were happening. So being legally blind or having low vision or being visually impaired, I've always managed to laugh at a few different things about that. For example, I remember the one time I was with my brother at our cottage, and we were getting things opened up. It was the beginning of the year. And Mom had sent along some poppy seed rolls for us to have for breakfast that morning. So I got up, and I had a poppy seed roll. Well, then my brother went to the bag, opened it up, and said, ooh. Well, apparently they weren't poppy seed rolls because the poppy seeds were moving. One other quick story. I was having dinner with some friends down in the flats, and I had gotten a hotel room to stay downtown that weekend. And so I needed to get from the flats downtown. And so I was looking for a cab to get from the flats downtown. So I see this car pulled over, black and white, with the sign on the top, and the door open. All right, I got my ride. I went up, got in the car, looked around. Wait a minute. Most taxis don't have a cage in front of the... So as soon as the police officer came over off of the sidewalk and yanked me out of the car, said, what are you doing? I realized it wasn't a taxi. So again, I could go on and on with stuff like that because I've always decided to laugh about things. Well, there I was needing a ride home, so I called my friends, Bill and Judy. Bill came over 10:30 at night, picked me up, and I stayed at their house for over a week to recuperate my shoulder. Now, just to give you a clear indication of who these people are, I've known Judy since I was in 5th grade. Where am I pointing? Over here at the old Central School. She was the school librarian, and it just happened in 5th grade. That was the year that I lost my vision. And while my parents were taking me to every doctor and every specialist to try and figure out what happened and maybe get back to normal, and the teachers were trying to figure out how to work with me, and so how to continue through school and finish the year anyway, Judy was taking action in another way. She knew how much I loved to read and how much time I spent in her library. So she signed me up for the Talking Book program and got me all kinds of large print books and got my textbooks in large print. So while everyone else was naturally concerning the short term, Judy was looking long term and making sure I maintained my love of reading. Fast forward 7 years, I'm a senior in high school, and my English teacher is Mr. Strom. Yeah, that Mr. Strom. And Judy had gotten promoted to another library position throughout the school district, and her office was in the high school library. So for 3 years, I worked with her as a library aide, and was with her again. So in my senior year of English class, American literature, we were reading Huckleberry Finn, and the Talking Book program never sent me the tapes. So I didn't have Huckleberry Finn. How was I going to do this? Somehow they didn't have it, or they were out on loan or whatever. Imagine, if you will, an educated, well-read woman from small-town Ohio spending her evenings, her free evenings at home, reading the exploits of that escaped slave Jim and Huck Finn riding that raft down the Mississippi. Imagine her reading that into a tape machine so that I would have the book and be able to learn and be able to absorb it. So for night after night, she read Huckleberry Finn into that tape machine. Then a few years later, I had just graduated from college, was still looking for a job. I happened just to be sitting in her office, visiting and passing the time. She gets a phone call from the editor of the Amherst News-Times. Are there any high school kids there that would be interested in writing sports? We need somebody to cover the sports down at the high school. She said, well, forget the high school kid. I've got somebody that's better for you. Somebody that knows the sports, knows the coaches, and is a pretty good writer. So she hung up the phone and said, Jerry, get up there. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, get up there. They need a reporter. I'm like, Judy, I can't. How am I going to cover a football game with binoculars or bat? She said, you can do it. Get up there. And for 2 years, I learned more about writing and more about communicating and interviewing people than I could have ever in any other situation. So 30 years ago, Judy and Bill get together, and they've been my lifelong friends for things like that. And like I say, I was there with them for over a week, recuperating from my shoulder. Then there's my friend Dave, who was really sorry he couldn't be here today, but he had a family commitment in San Francisco. I've known Dave since 7th grade. He's a doctor, an anesthesiologist, and as soon as he heard about my little accident, just like so many others, why didn't you call me when you were sitting on the curb? Because I don't do that. So after I went home, after a week, the first night, Dave shows up at my house to help me take a shower. And let me tell you, you know who your friends are when they help you take a shower. But he helped me with the sling. I spent the weekend with him and his family, and his wife Liz, another dear friend who owns a catering business, had me set up with a freezer full of food and a kitchen full of groceries. And then there's some of the families that I've met and gotten close to here at St. Peter's. I mentioned Pam, but then there's their whole family, Carol and Chuck and Kim and Doug and Bob. The whole time I was recuperating, Carol and Kim checked up on me. How you doing? When I was down, they were calling me. When I needed something, they were there. I remember about a year ago, Pam, I was sitting at their kitchen table, and right out of the blue, she invited me to something or expected me to be somewhere. And Carol said, well, don't you think you ought to actually invite him rather than just telling him to be there? And Pam said, no, that's okay. He's part of the family. And ever since then, there was a separate time when Kim said, you know you're part of the family now. And Doug said the same thing. Well, let me tell you, when that family says you're part of the family, they're not kidding. And then one other thing, as I was recuperating, one day I checked my email, and there was a message from Tom Holstein. You heard Lynn earlier today asking for continued prayers for Tom. Tom's gone through a lot this year, as all of you know here. Earlier this year, he had shoulder surgery, and now he's recovering from hip surgery. Well, as I was recuperating, I get this email saying, Jerry, I apologize for not contacting you sooner, but when I had shoulder surgery, Lynn set up these t-shirts where she cut out the seam and replaced it with Velcro so that they were easy to put on. And I apologize, excuse me. I apologize, whoa, sorry. I apologize for not getting them to you sooner, but I bet you could use them. Well, as I looked at the calendar, that was the same week that Tom was going through hip surgery. And he took the time to make sure that I would get these t-shirts, 3 of them. So as I was thinking about what Robert, my coach, was telling me that I was missing, and what all these people had demonstrated to me when I needed it most, it was one simple 4-letter word. And I'm going to use that 4-letter word right here in church. It's love. That's all it is love. And it's really interesting because when I chose the message for this morning, or the theme for this morning's message, I had chosen the title weeks before Easter Sunday and weeks before this shoulder. Pastor Bev can attest to it. I can see clearly now. You might remember the song by Johnny Nash. Trust me, I'm not going to sing. But I will go over the words. I can see clearly now. The rain is gone. I can see all obstacles in my way. Gone are the dark clouds that had me blind. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. And it really is. I think I can make it now. The pain is gone. And I just forgot the next line. All of the bad feelings have disappeared. Here is that rainbow I've been praying for. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. Amen.